Good morning, everyone. Lovely to see you here today. We have Sally Ray from STIPS, primary teacher for inclusive practice, who's going to talk to us this morning about supporting our children with transition and change. Hand over to Sally.
Good morning. So when we're thinking about managing transitions, what do we mean by transitions? Well, children go through lots of transitions in their lives. Some are really big and some are small. Some are easy to cope with and some make our children very worried. Changes can take place in our family setups, in how our friendships are going, or just our own likes, dislikes, and beliefs. And all these are part of change and transition experiences as we grow up. So we have these bigger changes like transitioning from one class to another or from one school to another. But there are also those small transitions every day, coming into school from home, going from playtime back into the classroom, moving from an activity on the carpet to an activity at a table. It could be transitions between friendship groups. So all of these transitions have an impact on our children. Some of them they're able to cope with really well, and others they find really challenging. So what might the children find challenging about transition? As I said, even moving within small activities within the classroom for some children can make them feel really uncertain. If they're moving between classes, they might worry about how the new teacher might approach them or relate to them, or whether they'll be able to find the resources that they need. Where will they hang their coat? Will the teacher allow them to go to the toilet when they need to? Will they be with their friend? Will their books look different? Even some of those things that can seem quite small to us can make children feel uncertain and anxious about what is happening. So all of these things are the kind of difficulties that children can experience. So that uncertainty, and as it says, it could be those physical changes, it could be small social changes, it could be sensory changes. My new classroom might not smell the same as my old classroom. The windows might be in a different place, so it's too warm or too cold. All of those things can make a difference for a child. They may feel a sense of loss or grief for what they're leaving behind. They may worry about the unpredictability. The routine's going to be changing. Things just aren't quite the same as what they're used to. They've got to learn those new rules, those new routines, and those expectations. And their habits will be different. And so they're breaking habits that they've established over that past year if they're moving to a different classroom. That transition and all these emotions can lead to children feeling more tired, and it can lead to them experiencing some form of relational stress. So all of these things are what we need to take into account when we think that perhaps our children are experiencing difficulties in relation to transition. So if we have a look at this image of an iceberg, this is starting to tell us a little bit about why the child is finding change difficult and what that's looking like. So it's quite usual and typical to see changes in behaviour when a transition or a change is coming up for a pupil or has happened already. And if we have a look at this iceberg, on the top of the iceberg, above the sea and above the water, we can see what we're actually seeing within the children. So we might see some of these behaviours. We might see children being very grumpy, we might see them screaming, we might see rage, we might see a real need for controlling everything around them. Some children might hide, we might see crying. So some of these are those bigger behaviours that we might see, whereas other things might be quite small. We might see children worrying about coming into school, not wanting to separate from their parent or carer. We might see them needing to take a teddy bear with them, or needing to take other objects with them, or not being able to manage something that they had previously been really confident in doing. Those are the outward behaviours that we can see, and they might seem very untypical for our child. But the blue bit underneath the water is the reasons behind the behaviour. So if a child is becoming more frustrated, they're tearful or clingy, it might be because they are experiencing these emotions. They might be feeling anxious, they might be feeling overwhelmed, they might be feeling frightened, they might be feeling worried or stressed or exhausted, or any combination of those emotions. But the child may be completely unaware that those are the emotions that they're feeling, and they are communicating to us through their behaviour that something is not right for them. So the communication might come out by them refusing to go into the classroom, or not wanting to leave you, or hiding their books or hiding their book bags. Behaviour that you find quite unusual, but that may be the child's way of communicating that they're feeling worried, concerned, anxious about what is happening. So it's really important to have a look at your child's behaviour, and then to start to think, what could the reason be for this behaviour? What might be happening underneath for the child? So if we think about this diagram here, it's thinking about how those behaviours are representing the feelings and thoughts that the child might be experiencing. And uncomfortable feelings can lead to behaviours that can appear quite challenging or out of the ordinary. So we need to think beyond that behaviour. So we might be saying to the child, "Oh, I noticed that you want to take Teddy into school today. I wonder if you're feeling a little bit worried." Or, "I noticed that you haven't wanted to go to school this week. I wonder if something has happened at school to make you feel a little bit concerned or worried." So the "I wonder" phrase is a really helpful one to use, that you're trying to start a conversation with your child to find out and explore what the reasons are behind their behaviour. When you use the "I wonder" phrase, you can then add, shall we try and put what we're thinking into a thought bubble? Or shall we try and write down some of the things that you're thinking? Or shall we try and look for a way around that? So you're giving your child an open way to explore something with you. Using that "I wonder" phrase starts things off, and then you give them a way of helping them through the situation. So let's think about how we can help children to manage change and to navigate their way through these different transitions. So we're going to think about some of those emotional tools. So these aren't necessarily the things, but they're ways of talking about worry and emotions that you can use to help your child. And then we'll start to look at some of the practical tools, which are some physical resources that you might use to help your child deal with the unpredictability of change and transition. As we go into the next slide, don't worry about the amount of writing. You can refer back to it later and have a look at the different things that are mentioned on there. So first of all, let's think about those emotional tools. As I said, there's quite a bit of writing on the slide, but hopefully you can enhance it on your screens. So the top point is probably the most important of it all. It's to think about when's a good time to talk about some of these issues with your child. The summer holidays are quite long, and it's very easy to get frustrated, tired, and stressed ourselves as adults. And if the children are showing behaviours that need regulating, we can't help them if we're super stressed or worried ourselves. So it's much better to try to take a few seconds to calm yourself, or to go away and have a cup of tea and think about how the behaviour is just the child, your child, saying they need some help, and that we can find a way to help them. And that can help to reduce the stress that you're feeling if you just reflect on your child's behaviour is just their way of seeking help. They might not know what help they need, but they're communicating through their behaviour that something is not quite right. So if it's a day when you're feeling really stressed, you're trying to juggle too many things, that's not the day to sit down and talk to your child. But if you can go away, have a cup of tea, have a bit of a break, and then come back when you're feeling much calmer and well regulated yourself, then you're in a much better position to help to regulate your child. So as we talked about on the last slide, it's about trying to notice the feeling behind the behaviours. So talking to your child, starting with those phrases, I'm wondering if you're getting upset because you're worried about your new class, or that you're worried that you won't be with your friends, or you're worried about something else. That might not be what your child is worried about, but it gives them a chance to start that conversation with you. You can then add, shall we write, talk, draw your worry? And you can do that in all kinds of ways. People try, there are lots of books that are available to help you to read and start a story with your child about worry, which might be another way in. So try to prepare them for potential worries or difficulties and address these before they arise. So photos of something that's going to happen, a picture of their new school uniform, or a picture of their books that they're going to put in their school bag, or anything that you have from school, or you can look on the school website. Looking at those and doing that regularly through the holidays can really support your children. And try to sort worries or questions into, can we find out about this? Is there something that we can learn a bit more to make you feel better? Or is this out of our control? Because there are some things that aren't within your control. And if your child is worried about where they're going to sit at their table over the holidays, you're not going to be able to answer that question. But you can talk to them about a plan for doing it. Well, on your first day at school, I can chat to the teacher about the things that you're worried about, and then you can perhaps work with your teacher. She will help you to find where your table is. So you can set up a plan if it's something that's out of your control. But your plan needs to be something that you know you will be able to deliver with your child. Because if you have a plan that is not deliverable, then when it comes to the event, your child's likely to feel more distressed and anxious because what they thought was going to happen has not. Try to talk to your child about whether it's a thought or a fact. So if they're worrying about something, nobody's going to play with me at lunchtime. So is that a fact or is that a thought? If it's a thought, we still need to validate that, and we need to talk through that with the child. Yeah, okay. try to remember that your child may not be able to verbalise or understand what their worry is. They might just have a general feeling of uncertainty. So it might take a little while to explore with them some of the things that they're worried about. But try not to dismiss or downplay any of their worries, because their worries are really important to them. And if we say, oh, don't worry, that's not a problem, for them it feels like their worry has been pushed away. So that's not to say that we want to make their worry into anything bigger, but we can listen to them and talk through things and saying, okay, so what do you think you could do that would make you feel better about that? You can also use tools like the bear cards or emoji faces to help your child communicate how they're feeling, because for some children, talking about their feelings is really difficult and they're not quite sure what those feelings are. Whereas if you start off with some of the emoji faces, you can start to explore how they're feeling. So if you have the different emoji faces out, you can say, which face is you when you're thinking about moving to your next class? Or which face is you at playtime? Or how do you feel? Point to the face that's how you feel when you go into school in the morning. And so you can use lots of different examples of situations, and you might want to throw in some where you know how they're feeling about. So for example, which face is how you feel when we go to the cafe or when we go to the beach, so that you do some of the things that they're familiar with, so you know that they're pointing to the correct emoji. But those visual prompts can really help to get your child started in talking about what they're worried about, or enables them just to point to the different faces without even talking, which will give you an idea where to start on another day. And whenever you're doing this with your child, you might want to break it down into small bursts. And you know your children the best, so you will know when's a good time to speak to them, how carefully you speak to them, whether you use visual prompts, and how much you talk about their worries, because your child is an individual, so you need to respond to how you know they deal with their anxieties and worries. So those are all the different emotional kind of tools that we can use when we are talking to a child to try to find out what is leading to the behaviours that we're seeing. Going on to some of the practical tools that you can use, there are all sorts of resources that are really helpful. Now, not every child will like these or need these tools, but some of the things provide them with structure and reassurance that generally help them to prepare for change. And as I said, you know your child best, so you know if you're doing too much preparation and whether that greater preparation makes them more anxious. But in this case, generic calendars or some of these prompts can really help your child, and you can explore with them which things work and be very informal. So calendars, you can print off calendars, and your child and you can cross off the days so that they know exactly when they're going back to school or when something is going to happen, and you can count how many days or how many sleeps it is until that event happens. So that tries to calm some of the children who are saying, is it tomorrow I'm going back to? When am I going back to school? So those calendars that you cross off can be really helpful. Checklists, and there are all sorts of resources to help you available online, but checklists can help as well. So you can have a checklist of the things that your child needs to take to school. If they worry about forgetting things, you can have a little checklist, so a book bag, PE kit, or the things that they need to put in their book bag, and you can have that stuck on the back of the front door, or you can have it inside their book bag so they can just check through what it is that they need. And if your child has difficulty in reading some of those checklists, then you can use visual ones that have the pictures of the different things. You can take photos of all the different things that they need to put into their book bag, or all different elements of their morning routine, and make that into a visual checklist to remind them of what they need to do. As we've talked about before, photographs of what's going to happen, and if you speak to Mrs. Charman about this, she will be able to help you and find you what you need. So it's really helpful to get organised early. You can do some daily planning with your child, particularly if they're moving on to secondary school and they are going to have a 2-week timetable, or they have to be much more organised in what they take with them. You can have a little daily plan that you can start to practice over the holidays. So you need to get up, you need to clean your teeth, you need to get dressed, then you have breakfast, then you pack your school bag, and these are the things that you put in it. And if your child is anxious about some of those routines, practicing them over the holidays can be really helpful. It can also be useful to explore same and different, and thinking about all of the things that are going to be the same when your child moves to their new class or their new school, and then some of the things that they think are going to be different, how those things might be really exciting, and they might be some of the things that they wanted to change anyway, but then you can work on those things that are different. So tours of the school, online, or being able to look at virtual tours of the school your child's going to can be really helpful. And all of those, schools have a great deal of information on their website now. So if your child is moving to secondary school, there'll be lots of information on there. And your child will have done lots of work around transition by the time they leave their current class or their current school, to help them to prepare for where they're going next.